So we're there for that.
Where?
It is in the company store, on 303 North Main in Fort Bragg, and we're on the very west end. And Friends of Health puts it on, but we rent a room from the Mendocino Center for Spiritual Living. And you'll see that above the door when you walk in, and you'll also see our grief group flyer on the door. And if one of the things that I try to make certain people understand is that sometimes just getting there is a big deal. And I don't mean that it's hard to find. I mean, when you're grieving, to have to get up and get dressed and leave the house sometimes is a big deal. And sometimes 2 hours sounds like it might be too much. So you're not required to stay for the entire time. You come and let it work for you. Use it in a way that works best for you. So we welcome any and all, and we thank you for trusting us with your hearts.
Gravity, bad for all of us. So you look at this array of, when we did the dilemmas of dementia, and I kept thinking, well, who do we need to have on a panel? And I kept thinking, am I out of my mind? There's 10 people. And the same thing was true here, but as I think you both have said, is that like we need all of this in some way. Some of it, part of what I'm hoping will happen at the small tables is you can say, can I just write a will out on my legal pad, and you can have that question answered. Or, like part of what Anya is talking about is there's chronic care, chronic problems, not just cancer, but there's a lot of other people with neurological problems. Who's not here? We don't have a neurologist here to talk about all of Parkinson's and all of the other problems that isolate and make life difficult. For so many of us, I'm kind of embarrassed. I feel like the Forrest Gump for, all of this, and that I've got cancer, I have, helped my husband die legally. It's been an amazing journey, but the support that we each can have and receive. I think about Linda Jo, who helped me going to Chapel by the Sea to fill out all the forms, because I went like, for God's sake, I'm a medical social worker, who needs that? And I just held her hand the whole time. This is scary. Each one of it, writing a will, it's scary, because you're writing a love letter, or you're writing a non-love letter. These are not, we put these off for good reason. They're emotionally difficult. So my background is a medical social worker, and Mark and I were comparing. You've been since '76 that you started at Anderson Valley. I started at Long Valley Health Center in Laytonville in '78 as a medical social worker. So we have seen, what's happened. The core thing that I think is really important, and I'd like then to open for more conversation or things you want to add, is what are we getting wrong? But what are we getting right? We've got lawyers here, we've got people that are advocates, we've got people who have, how many people here are widower, partner, deceased? Okay, so you've been through some element of this, and you know what it's like. So I want to say that the other thing that's unique about Mendocino County is that we all came here from a lot of different places. Not that many people were born and raised here. Many of you had children here, and you have that second generation, third generation, fourth for some of you. But for a lot of us, we came here, and we don't have sisters and brothers, and we don't have that stuff right here. So we're relying on our friends, relying on our neighbors, we're relying on our professional help. And I'm not going to go into the fact that it's being threatened, because what we can do is neighbors helping neighbors is more powerful than anything that they started the us and them. I didn't start it, but they are trying to take away our right to live long, well, with disability, with aging, poverty. There's even part of the who's not here. We don't have a financial planner here. We don't have a real estate agent here. We don't have an expert in getting people into assisted living here. These are all things that are also very important parts of our planning. And by thinking ahead, considering the unthinkable, thinking about the unthinkable, and then getting it dealt with, getting our wishes down on paper, communicated, organized in such a way that we don't have to think about it anymore. That's my real goal for me, myself, and it's really been very helpful. Several people here have helped me a lot to be able to pull this all together. So I encourage you to recognize that fear is the enemy, I think you said. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I'd like to suggest is maybe we can kind of either go down again, either in order, but what more do you want to say? What are some of either the stories or the things that you wish? Now, there's a post inside, we gave you, each one of you, we printed out an official post, the thing that Mark held up. And again, you'll want to communicate with your doctor, but we didn't want you to mention it and not have you see what it was. Because this is thinking about the worst case scenario and what do you want to have done. Okay, so is that a right place to start again, Maggie? You ready to go? Okay, thanks.
So I wanted to talk about what you can do to make things easier. And before I wanted to do that, I wanted to let you know that there actually are 4 other fiduciaries that are attending this event with us. So it used to be just me, and now there's like eight in the county. And so we have a plethora of people that can be of support to any of you, if that's the way that you want to go, is having a fiduciary support you with your legal documents. So one of the things that you can do now is get your legal documents in place or updated. And what that means is, is your will or trust the way that you want it to be? For example, are the trustees still alive, able to do the work, interested in doing the work, competent enough to do the work? And the other thing would be to, if you don't have those documents, see an attorney like Deborah. We have some really phenomenal estate planning attorneys in our community, so they're really good resources for you. The next thing I'd say is put info together that your agent on your power of attorney or your successor trustee is going to need to know. So for example, if you become incapacitated, someone needs to actually step into your life, your agent. They need to know all the bills that need to be paid, how they're paid, how to deal with your house, how to contact people who help maintain your house. They need to do everything that you do in your life, but you're not able to do it anymore. That's for finance. A power of attorney for healthcare is someone who would step in and make your healthcare decisions for you. So if they don't know what you want, it's going to be really hard. So just think about what someone's going to need to know about you personally so you can empower them and educate them to represent what you want. That's what this is all about, as far as being power of attorney or successor trustee or executor. The other thing is make sure that all of your beneficiary information is in your legal docs. I know Deborah does that. She has an amazing list of all the contacts that you need. A lot of attorneys don't include that. And it's really helpful for your trustee because we cannot do distribution to them. We cannot, get the information we need for tax purposes, like their Social Security. Sometimes I have to do an heir search. I have to hire a company to go out and find the heirs because I don't have the information for them. And that's a big expense. That if you thought about that and actually put that in your document and changed it when they changed, that would be really, really helpful to a fiduciary or to family members or friends who you've asked to do that job. The other thing that has become more and more important is a Schedule A. And I know I'm getting into the nitty-gritty, but these are really big issues. So a Schedule A in a trust is a list of your assets in the trust. I've had a situation where we had all these accounts that weren't in a trust, but the Schedule A said they were, and a couple of the banks actually put them in the trust because they were on the Schedule A. Unheard of in my profession, unheard of. So get your Schedule A's together and keep them updated, because if not, we would have headed straight into probate. So this, because the Schedule A was in place, we avoided probate, and it was amazing. I was completely shocked. Thank you, local, and there were local banks that did this. The other thing I want to say is, I don't know if there's any Wells Fargo, Chase, or Bank of America people here. It is so hard to deal with those financial institutions. So if you want to do something that's easy for you, I mean, if all of your auto pays are out of a Chase bank, leave it that way. But if you can, switch to the local banks. They are so amazing to work with, and the bigger banks, we have to go through their back office legal departments, and sometimes weeks and months later, you're doing something that our local banks will do in one session. So just a thought. Another thing is, make sure that your trustee, your executor, power of attorney has all the information that they need. I don't want to push my book, but my book has a lot of information in it that your trustee and your executor knows. If you do it in a different way, put it on an Excel spreadsheet, do it in a binder, whatever, but make sure that that the people who are going to take over these roles know what they're doing and who to contact. Your vendors, your PG&E bill, your insurance companies, all that stuff. And the other thing is simplify your life. If you can, start giving those things out. You say, oh, I think my daughter wants that. Give it to her. I think the thrift store would want this. Start moving things out of your life to simplify. That's some of the better ideas. And then I do want to make a comment on the end-of-life option. What I'm suggesting people, because I lead seminars on putting your affairs in order, and I did a fiduciary, we have to do a lot of training for our license, and I attended a class put on by the people who were the authors of the Death with Dignity Act. Do people know what that is? Does everybody know what that is? It's California in 2016. I may get the dates wrong. 2016? 2016 passed a law saying that if you have capacity, you're a California resident, you're over 18, and you are terminal, you have the option to end your life. And you have to have 2 doctors say that you have all those, you have capacity and all of that. And then one of those doctors will give you a prescription for a cocktail of medications. When I was at this workshop a year ago, what the authors of this bill said is that they're working on, so let me back up. You have to have capacity to do this. You have to be able to say, and the doctor will be asking you whether you're depressed and all of that stuff. You really have to have capacity to say that you want to end your life. And what has happened is that some people get to the point where they've just lost capacity and they can't actually make the process start. Well, the Death with Dignity people are, they're working on a law to be added to this that says that if you have incapacity, your agent can make your decision for you. It's not in place. It's not in place yet. What I suggest you all do, if you're interested in this, put a clause in your advanced healthcare directive that says, if I become incapacitated, and it's California law that my agent can make the decision for me to end my life, I authorize that they can do that, following the rules of Death with Dignity. Put something like that in your document, and then if the time comes that you become incapacitated and the law is in place, your agent will be able to act on your behalf. Really important. I really believe that we all have an option, a responsibility, and it's a duty to make sure our end of life goes better or goes well, and the only one that can make that difference is us. So get comfortable about this conversation. Start to be happy about this conversation. Engage with your loved ones about this conversation, and just really make sure that the things that you do will empower yourself and everybody else to do what you want them to do for you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I make one statement? I've used the Graceful Farewell book, and it's really useful.
Yeah.
Really helpful. Outline everything.
Okay, go ahead.
Leona?
Ask the question.
I understand that you are going to do a course with Grateful Farewell. When does it begin?
Yeah, I'm doing a 4-part seminar starting on April 15th. I have flyers at the table out there. So, yeah. Any other, Cindy?
Somebody asked me this before we got started here. Could you please explain the difference between a California licensed fiduciary as opposed to a financial advisor or real estate agent who have fiduciary duties?
So the question was, can I explain the difference between a California licensed fiduciary and someone who has a fiduciary duty? Like Deborah has a fiduciary duty, doctors have a fiduciary duty, probably APS, I don't know, they might have a fiduciary, they don't. Right, and so financial advisors will say, we're the fiduciary, you hear that word thrown around. And what it means, what a fiduciary duty means is that you have a duty to the person that you're serving. With a California licensed fiduciaries, we are actually a body of a profession in California that came into being in 2009, where we have to get a license so we can serve. We don't sell real estate, we do investments, but we don't make the decisions. We use the experts to carry out the work that we do so that we can act as a trustee, executor, power of attorney, conservator, and those roles. Real estate agents can't act as trustee. It would be unethical, or maybe for their own personal family they could, but they couldn't put a license out as a California licensed fiduciary and start doing that. Financial advisors also wouldn't take on these roles unless on personal basis. So it's a specific license. Does that say enough, Cindy Jo, would you say? Okay. Thank you.
A lot of people talked about the strong sense of community, and one of the things I should have mentioned that's part of estate planning from my perspective is your planning. I always open up the conversation of what are you giving back? There are so many worthy organizations here on the coast, and with several of you here in the room, we've done that planning of what can we give back to local nonprofits. So that, to me, is always part of the planning conversation. A little goes a long way with a lot of the nonprofits here on the coast. So I just like to plant that seed with people, and a lot of folks is, no, just everything's to my nieces and nephews, everything's to my kids, but then I'll see those people a couple years later. You know what? I want to leave 1,000 here and 5,000 here, and it's meaningful. The other thing I wanted to talk about was capacity to make your wishes known is different from a legal perspective than necessarily from a medical perspective. Someone comes to me and they have dementia. My understanding is there are 5 stages of dementia, and it's kind of what my observation has been. There is a stage at which folks are better at certain times of the day. Some people better in the morning. I have actually seen people who are better in the afternoon. But for the purposes of making their legal wishes known, it's in the time and the moment. Do they know what they're doing? Do they know what they're asking? And this, to me, is not a one and done process. I'll revisit it at different times and different times of day to make sure someone really, really knows what they're doing. And, I'm making a will. I'm saying I want to cut my daughter out. I'm saying I want to leave everything to one daughter. We go through that and make sure that the person actually has the legal capacity, from my objective of observation, that they can do what it is they want to do. I do work with a lot of folks with early stages of dementia on all the way through. There is a way to preserve dignity. A lot of people know when they're losing capacity, and it's hard. It's hard watching it. These intelligent people who have been leaders of companies, leaders of community, knowing that there's going to come a point in the near future or 2 years down the road where they can't make their own decisions. So helping them make good judgments, including who can step in for them and with them, to partner with them. Sometimes that's a professional fiduciary, sometimes it's a close friend, sometimes it's a family member. So that is part of what I consider to be part of estate planning myself. Which we've talked about some about healthcare directives. I'm just picking up on some topics that came up here. That is also part of estate planning, is opening up the discussion. And no matter what age a person is. Deal with people with new babies, or they're in their 20s or 30s, all the way up to, I think my oldest client is 98 at the moment. Okay, there's a spectrum between, oh, just pull the plug, or keep it going no matter what. There's a spectrum, and opening up that dialogue is, I think, an important part of what we do. I think Maggie does that too. So where are you on that spectrum, and how can we put the modifiers in there so that your healthcare wishes are truly your healthcare wishes? I frequently will have one-on-one discussions with clients. Sometimes it's a few minutes. Sometimes it's an entire 1 hour session of figuring out what those healthcare wishes should look like to represent what a person truly wants. I also use that time to strongly encourage people to share their opinions and thoughts. Go home and have a family meeting. Have a meeting with your person, your Susan or your Maggie, of what do I want to happen if I cannot make my own decisions, because we always get to make our own decisions for as long as we are capable to do so. So the healthcare directive is what steps in when you can't make your decisions anymore. So having that well spelled out in advance. Example I give clients, it's not something you want to be doing in the last minute as you're being rushed into the hospital. When my husband and I first moved to California 40 years ago, I didn't know anybody. My appendix was ready to burst, and I was in the emergency room, and my boss called in a surgeon. The emergency room doctor actually said, if you know a good surgeon, this is the time. So I called my boss. He sent this surgeon over, and I guess he was a big deal because all the nurses started kowtowing to him, but he said, get her to the operating room right away. The hospital administrator stood blocking the door with her clipboard, saying she hasn't signed all of these documents yet. The doctor, and I will never forget this because I'd already been given anesthesia, I was almost all the way under, said, if you don't get out of the way, you're going to be doing a lot more paperwork because she's going to be dead. So this is a story I use to illustrate to clients the importance of making these decisions in a calm time and an objective time of, oh gosh, what do I want to happen? Let's not be facing death's door while we're making that decision. Let's make it sitting around at a table, talking with family, talking with your attorney, talking with your healthcare agent. So there's a better time and place to do it than when you're at the operating room door. The other thing I want to say about healthcare directives is it is the most frequent change I have people ask to do. Your wishes change over the years. What your wishes are when you're 39 are not going to be those same wishes when you're 74. With my own mother, I heard her say through her 70s, early 80s, I want quality of life. As the end started coming nearer, she's like, well, maybe I want to be able to hang on a few more months or a few more years. So your wishes change, and having someone to talk those wishes through with is essential. I want to address something that Cynthia said about wills being your love letter, or writing people out. For both of those things, there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. they're not just documents, they're your legacy. It's your clear statement of what you want to happen after you're gone. If you're making unequal distributions, if you're cutting out a family member, cutting out a brother, cutting out a daughter, there's a kind way to do it, and there's a way to do it to make sure that it's enforceable so that your wishes do get carried out. We don't, California doesn't have a lot of teeth in its no contest. Oh, if I leave them $1, that's all they can get. Common myth. No, there is a right way and a wrong way to do it, and if you've got a tricky family situation, please don't do it yourself. Talk it through with an attorney. That's the way to do it, and I'm a big fan of having a 1-page or a 2-page clear statement of these are my wishes. And then we've got all the legal stuff that goes with it, but the clear statement of these are my wishes is really important. And along those lines, Maggie said, get your legal documents in place. They're not just documents, they're your wishes, they're your legacy. So whether it's your healthcare directive, your power of attorney, your trust, your will, these are the things that make your wishes be carried out both during your incapacity and after you pass away. And from my perspective, a big part of what we do is you don't just do your documents once and they're done, but I like to teach people how to keep things up to date, keeping those account numbers up to date, keeping the beneficiary list up to date, keeping your list of auto pays up to date, keeping your password list up to date, and where to find the passwords is a big part of what we go through. We consider it, we don't think we're document writers. We're organizers, we're facilitators, and we help people gather that all together so that it's in one place to make it as easy as possible for your family members, your loved ones, who's ever coming after you to get things taken care of. So.
Hey, I'm with you. I'm with you, yes.
I might drive in today.
Well,
That's actually not yours.
well,
Excuse me, appreciate it.
the discussion is going to happen. We're not there yet. That's the short answer.
On my drive in today, I heard Jack Johnson, who's got that mellow voice, and the song that was playing is "Everything's Better When We're Together." And it was just, the theme is like, we're better together, we're better together. And he was talking about a love relationship, but I'm also talking about we are better together. And the people on the panel and other people are saying, this is a scary topic. And for some people, death is not a frightening thing. I mean, I one friend, she'll remain unnamed, but who's present, who said, "You're a little blasé about death." And I went, I don't know why, but maybe that's sort of like you, Susan. It's been a vocation or a calling for me that I was the one. And so I have been honored, not just with my husband, to help either facilitate or be at the side of a lot of people. And what I watched was and it was beautiful, it was so beautiful. With my mom, with people who were just done and had medical assistance, and for other people who just knew when to let go. And we can facilitate that. Taking care of our health. The other thing I'm glad you reminded us, Mark, is he's a doctor, and we care about being well. And there's a lot that we can do to stay alive and active and well and not give up. So, when I talked about getting the last chapter right, it wasn't just about the end of life. It wasn't just about the last, 4 people on the table. It was about living well with chronic illness. It's about living well with, my partner died and I've lost half my money, but now maybe I can do some co-housing. Housing is an issue that's going to come up big time for a lot of people. They're, even if their homes are habitable and great, they're too far out. They can't. So we've got a lot of unanswered questions. This afternoon, I want to say, if anybody, even if you are going to go out and protest or come back, if you could come back, The afternoon session, I'm gonna have my easel set up. Somebody with good handwriting is gonna take notes and we'll record it. What I wanna do is the actual activism. When I say I, with Friends of Health and who we are. Where the real activism is gonna be is what are we gonna do? Who's willing to go to the Board of Supervisors and say, stop this insane red tagging of older homes, right? You know, we're hearing about that. We need to have people that are willing to, yes.
What's that?
Red tagging, homes that were built in in the early days that weren't permitted and whatever, and maybe they're class K, maybe they're substandard, but people have been living their whole lives, or they have rentals that they built up that are nice, that would pass inspection, but they're not legal. And it's being, Paul Katzif, you know a lot about this. We're hearing a lot about this. I have a couple of friends who are like, all of a sudden, their rentals to senior people are being red tagged, which means that they're being threatened to not be able to rent them out anymore, which means that people are losing their homes. So there's a lot that's helping the senior center. What are we going to do about the food banks being cut? How are we going to, either with money or time or effort or our gardens, how are we going to help facilitate? So this afternoon, I want there to be a really good brainstorming session. People that are willing to raise their hand and say, including you people on Zoom, I'm willing to be on a committee for that. I'm willing to be a part of, I'll go to the Board of Supervisors. We have work to do that is going to help, even if we didn't have this onslaught coming. Even if before that, and it's not going to get easier. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to the worthy panel, and I think Teresa, you were up next.
I am. Hello again. I wanted to, first of all, clarify a role of APS that I neglected to say before. APS is not an authority who goes into a home and removes anyone from a home. So just to be clear, APS does not remove anyone from their home. Just to be clear. And also, for those who are reporting abuse and neglect of others, APS is sworn to confidentiality. So we don't report our findings to anyone, including people who reported. We don't speak with anyone about anything unless the person who we are seeing, the client, gives written permission for us to speak with another person. So just to be clear about those couple of things that sometimes are not understood. Yes?
Is every state different in those for APS, or is it similar?
The question was, is every state the same or are different states different? No, they're all the same.
Oh, okay. This
So-
explains that your simple explanation explains a lot about a horrible thing that happened.
Yes, so
I couldn't get any information from APS.
that's correct. APS does not report out.
It's clear what happened.
Correct. And thirdly, about APS, on occasion, we are required to cross-report to law enforcement if we have a finding, if some allegation includes a crime. So law enforcement investigates crime. APS does not investigate crime. APS also does not perform welfare checks. Welfare checks are the duty of law enforcement. So I hope that clarifies a little bit. I just wanted to make sure I said those things. And then I wanted to bring up a couple of things that I don't think have been mentioned, although Cynthia stole my thunder a minute ago. In planning, please be aware of what type of insurance you have and what that covers. So in planning for relocation, in case I'm not able to live alone, I'm going to do this. In case this, I'm going to do that. Please be informed about what your insurance covers. Medicare does not cover long-term care, for example, but Medi-Cal does. So even though you may not have a need for Medi-Cal at this point in time, never hurts to apply, and you do need to renew that Medi-Cal annually. Also, if you're going to require caregiving services in your home because you have some needs or barriers to meeting your own needs. Medicare doesn't provide caregiving services. There are paid caregiving services available on the coast, and they're usually $30 to more per hour. Medi-Cal, at zero share of cost, provides you with free caregiving services through in-home supportive services, the social service program. So in planning ahead for needing things, needing help, please be aware of what your insurance covers and what it doesn't.
Teresa, could you talk about the current guidelines for being eligible for IHSS and Medi-Cal?
I don't have the dollar amount for Medi-Cal. At my table, there are flyers for Medi-Cal and also for CalFresh, which is supplemental food benefit. And seniors are eligible. So if you receive Social Security, it used to be that if you had Social Security, you were ineligible for CalFresh. That changed, and so you are eligible now. And I want to say, I'd be negligent myself to say that anything said here today, or the way things are now, may not continue to be the same. Where we don't know how services are going to be impacted. I can say that we live in a rather progressive state, and I know that there are a lot of people in our state who rely on services, and I know that that's known. And so who knows what our state individually might do, okay? But please be aware that social services is there to help you. There are services, and sometimes it would surprise you, like with Medi-Cal, the income cap on Medi-Cal keeps being increased. It keeps being increased. So you'd be surprised that you might be surprised that with your income, you are eligible for Medi-Cal at zero share of cost or a small share of cost. Okay? And then you don't have to pay that share of cost if you don't use it. So to have it in place is not a bad thing. I also wanted to address planning for relocation. If your thought is, well, I'll just move into senior housing. I'll just move into a senior housing apartment. I want you to know that in our community, the wait list right now for senior housing units is about 8 years. So if you put in an application today, you will not get an offer for a unit for 8 years. And in that time, they will be calling to say, hey, are you still interested in a unit? And you need to be able to call back and say, oh, heck yeah, keep my name on that list. So you need to have communication with the property managers of those senior housing units regularly to let them know you're on the list, okay? I think that's all for now.
Did Medi-Cal just go to only income?
Yes.
Based,
It's
not
oh
assets,
yes,
not assets.
correct. Yes, thanks for reminding me. So Medi-Cal, it used to be asset based, but now it's income eligible. It's just your income. So yes, it's huge because like I said, you may be surprised about your eligibility with Medi-Cal. Some people might have not applied before because they thought, oh, I have too many assets. I own my home. No, the rules have changed, so it's income based only. Thank you for reminding me.
Moving down, but John has something.
Another question. You said that you're eligible for CalFresh and you have Social Security, but is that income based now?
That is income based.
So if you have a retirement.
That's income based as well. Yes.
If you only have Social Security, you could be easily eligible.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear his question.
John's question was CalFresh, so EBT, is that income based only as well? And I said, yes, it is. So if you have retirement and Social Security, your income's higher. So you may be ineligible for that benefit. So yes.
You said something about here on the coast. If we live in Comanche, Elk, someplace else that's not right here, is it more difficult to get services?
No. So the question about location within Mendocino County and rural areas, Comshy or Little River, or other places, is it more difficult to get benefits other than somebody else who lives in Fort Bragg per se? No, it's not. You're a Mendocino County resident, you're entitled to the same benefits as everybody else here.
We want to have about another 25 minutes to finish this part of the panel, then we can break for lunch and small breakout tables. And people want to protest.
Got it. So one thing that I'll say, since it's limited, HIPAA. I want to talk about HIPAA. HIPAA is a law that serves an important purpose, I think. I have found that HIPAA is used to keep information from other people who could work in your best interest. My suggestion, and I've got a copy of one, I've got a copy, you can give me your email and I'll send one to you. Get HIPAA release forms signed. Don't date them, leave them blank, and just, I can explain to you about those. They're often they're included in an estate plan usually as well too. HIPAA releases are important. Let somebody that you trust be able to speak to medical professionals on your behalf. Very, very important. Another thing that I wanted to bring up, another organization, Compassion and Choices is a fantastic organization that helped bring in medical aid in dying. And I have got a copy of a great document that they do. It used to be called the Good to Go Kit, which I love, but it was a little tongue in cheek. But this is a great document.
What's it called now?
It's called My End of Life Decisions. Another thing that I think is really important to know about is a dementia provision, which also can be included in your estate plans. But in the event that you get dementia, you know, that's a trajectory. There's a broad range of people's relationship to what that looks like. You can write a dementia provision that lets the folks that you need to know what you want. And that can include voluntary stop eating and drinking. And I have facilitated with the doctor a few of those cases. And it's beautiful. It's empowering. It's loving. Another thing that I wanted to say, I've also helped folks put together paperwork to go to Switzerland. You know, one-way trip to Switzerland where euthanasia is, okay, we did one case like that. One thing that I do want everybody to know here, when you're making decisions, that the reality is that for aging in place, for live-in care, for legal, vetted, safe, live-in care right now in the state of California, in this county, costs $30,000 to $35,000 a month. Please take that into account when you're thinking about your advanced healthcare directive. And the one long-term placement that Medi-Cal pays for is skilled nursing facility. There is also an assisted living waiver program, which is a unicorn with a rainbow tail and wrapped in mink.
And not available in Mendocino County.
And not available in Mendocino.
Exactly.
So, skilled nursing facility. And the skilled nursing facilities that take long-term Medi-Cal patients, I don't know if you'd want to be there. You should take a field trip. You should really educate yourselves. And these sorts of things, this education and these field trips are going to help educate you about making the decisions in your planning now. So that's, again, I invite you to get real. And it's this panel is great. And I'm proud of each and every one of you for being here. This is sticking your toes in the water. It feels pretty good. It's not so bad. So, and I can talk about more. I have a lot of examples of the many different cases that I've worked, but I could do a TED Talk for God's sake. So I'll pass the microphone and you can ask any question that you have, and I love to try to answer.
Hi. I just wanted to talk a little more about the lunch program. Two things. It is not based on income. I think that there are people who don't think of going there because they think, well, only poor people should go there, and that's absolutely not true. It's a full-on lunch. The donations are $5, but it is considered a donation. If you don't have the $5, you can still eat your lunch. And it's $10 if a caregiver or a family member under 60 comes. But it's also just a great place to be. And, I really would encourage people that haven't been to the senior center to just come up there, browse the hallways. I mean, the lunches start to be served at 11:30, and at about 11 or 10 to 11, the hallways start filling up with people that are waiting for their meal and chit-chatting, and it just becomes, a really nice community center. So I want to encourage all of you to come to lunch and shop at the thrift store. Join an activity.
Could you say more about your peer counseling? What happens for people, the person who needs help? How do they get referred, that kind of thing?
Referrals can be made by anyone. They can be made by social workers from the county. They could be made by the home health nurses. They could be made by a neighbor or a friend. I usually go and do an assessment with people in their homes and talk to them to find out if it's something that they are interested in or want. All of the peer counselors have been through a 15-hour training that I provide, and I was thanking Susan Bridgemount, who did the job before me and gave me a lot of encouragement to start. She's here today from Anderson Valley. And basically we do a training in some of the issues that are affecting seniors. So issues such as isolation, grieving, loss of independence, loss of function, loss of vision, loss of hearing, and how that might affect people. So one of the things that we run into is that there are many people that, there's a stigma associated with talking about not being happy with some of these changes. And so it's actually, at this point, easier to find people to become peer counselors than it is to find people that want peer counselors coming into their homes. So I welcome referrals and hope to see some of you, and I'll be, out there during
We're
lunch.
hoping to break down some of the denial. I mean, I kept writing older, and I realized I was lying. I'm going to be 77. I think that's more than older.
When I was,
it's kind of hard to know when you need help.
yeah, when I was a social worker in my former job, working for MSSP, our guideline was people age 65 and over, and I started working there when I was in my 30s. And then suddenly I was like older than some of the clients that I was taking on. It was like, oh my God, really?
So,
Yeah.
I think one thing, I was a social worker, and when I took the training, I realized peer counseling is not social work, it's not therapy, is you're a good listener. So you're not trying to fix the problem or that. It's to be there to hear their story and to maybe reflect on it, and also your own experience as a peer with your own difficulties. But you're not there trying to be a therapist.
Yeah, thank you, John. That's good clarification.
On your lunches,
Social work.
Yes.
how about if you're a vegan? Are you gonna be comfortable in a?
You are not going to be comfortable if you're a vegan. Mondays are vegetarian, but they are vegetarian usually with cheese and dairy.
there's an ombudsman at a hospital somewhere. What's your, you know who that person is, and do you talk to them, and have a relationship with the people there, with that person? 'Cause I don't even know who it is, and I can't find him.
The question is there an ombudsman? There is an ombudsman at the hospital and the ombudsman is a patient advocate. And do I know them, and do I know how to get in touch with them? I don't know them.
I do.
Maggie does.
I do.
Maggie does, yeah.
Because
The answer, who is it?
I was spent 1 month in, at Sherwood Oaks. And they had one, eventually you can find, but their function seemed to be to keep me in. They didn't want me to go home. And so, you know, I insisted and left, but.
Yeah.
But the problem is, you know, if I have a problem with a hospital, it's almost impossible to deal with, I mean.
Grab my card, just grab my card at lunch. You can call me. Grab my card, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the ombudsman is.
Maggie knows who that is.
Okay.
It's at my office.
Okay. An ombudsman is.
I was told that Dr. William Miller, who used to be the medical director for the hospital, and he was on the panel in July, that supposedly he is now a person who will respond to complaints, concerns,
Oh, that's great.
problems. I don't know if that's true, but let's flood with calls, because we all have reasons to say thank you.
And
I
just-
had excellent care at times, and other times not. They need to know about it.
And just so you know, the ombudsman is a county of the a county function. It's a volunteer organization through the AAA, I think, the area agency. Yeah, isn't it? There's an ombudsman. So in every skilled nursing facility, there's a listen, call the ombudsman if you have a complaint. I've worked with ombudsmen on cases over the years, and I have to say that I have found them not always so effective. So if you can call an administrator, that's great.
Could you be that person? Is that part of your function?
In a weird way, I'm a private ombudsman of sorts, I think you could say.
Right.
Thank you. Okay.
So kind of like what Helen was saying for the senior center, I want to clarify that Cancer Resource Center services are not income-based. I sometimes have people say like, oh, I have enough, I should leave these services for someone who's is less fortunate than I am, or has a lower income bracket. But please know that our services are for everyone and anyone who is experiencing anything related to cancer. That could be screening for cancer. You don't have to have a cancer diagnosis. We're really here for anyone who needs support related to anything around cancer. And that's why we're here. So please spread the word to make use of our services. I wanted to add a couple more services that we offer. We have support groups, both in person and online, at here on the coast as well as inland. We also have financial support that's again related to anything that you need that's related to your cancer diagnosis. The funds are limited, but I have not had to turn anyone down for a request that they've made. And that can be someone has a vehicle and they can drive themselves to treatment, but their tires are totally bare and they need new tires on their car. It can be somebody needs a case of Insure. Someone needs help paying a utility bill for a month while they're undergoing treatment. So things like that. Cancer Resource Centers is a really unique organization, and we're incredibly fortunate to have this resource in our community. There's really, even in California, I'm not aware of anything that's quite like what we do. We don't receive any government funding, which is, at this time, a gift, for sure. But we rely largely on our community and individual donations to keep our doors open. So like estate planning was mentioned, definitely please keep cancer resource centers in mind. When you're making your estate plans, we definitely benefit from donations like that. We also have a couple of fundraisers that we do throughout the year. So we have like the upcoming Big River Adventure, and part of that is a walk. So if you want to join in on that, there's ways like that that you can get involved and contribute. I mentioned volunteer drivers. We're always looking for volunteers. So if you or someone you know is interested in making a difference in someone's life, it's a huge gift to be able to give someone a ride to their appointment, whether that's locally, like within the Fort Bragg area, or driving someone to Ukiah. Jen is one of our volunteers and drives people, and it's just, it makes such an incredible difference in people's lives. Our vision is that no one will face cancer alone, and I know that, I'm sure anyone here in this room who's been diagnosed with cancer understands like how terrifying that is, and
Anyone
how.
want a hand raise here for people who have been or have been experiencing people that, caregivers to people with cancer? So you know what she's talking about. Yeah, there we are.
And even if you haven't been diagnosed with cancer, I'm sure everyone in this room knows someone in their immediate family or a close friend who's experienced cancer. So we understand how terrifying that can be and how alone people feel. And that's where our patient navigators step in and really just walk by your side and make sure that you don't feel alone, and that you can get your questions answered, and you have an advocate, someone who's there to really help you make sure that you understand what your options are and that your needs are being met, and you have someone to listen and offer comfort and support. So yeah, we're here, we're free. Please make use of our services and tell everyone you know, because I'm always surprised that there are a lot of people in our community who are not aware of our services. So thank you.
There is a denial of death in our culture. And one way to address that is, or hope to have the discussion, is the PULSE form, which I'm familiar with as a physician. And the PULSE stands for Physician Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. All too often when I was in the emergency room, people would come in with a life-threatening illness, and I would ask them, what are their goals? Do they want me to do everything? Or do they want me to avoid burdensome medical interventions? And they would often look at me like a deer in the headlights. Not the time to be having this discussion for the first time. So I want to echo what people have said. Nonetheless, I had a lot of these discussions, and it's nice to have a little bit more time than in the emergency room. So anyway, I'm a big fan of this. I want to thank Mark for promoting this. This is very helpful, and we can go over this later, all the little details. But I just want to promote those discussions.
It's California though.
It is California, yes.
Their state,
So
their-
if I'm in New York or Europe or somewhere else and go to the emergency room, what will?
Well, that's true. What happens if you're not in California? What happens if you go to New York or some other state that doesn't have this?
I can answer that.
Good. Here.
So PULSE is a state document, although certain states will honor it. For example, we, in the northern part of the state, most people will honor Oregon forms, and Oregon will usually honor California forms. There has been a movement to make a national form, but again, most of these things are state-based, and so there is no national form at this point. We have but most of the forms are pretty similar. So again, this is an expression of your wishes, and if you take it in, even if you're from out of state, it's still an expression of your wishes, and hopefully they will honor it, because that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to honor what your wishes are. No, we have people who, especially on the East Coast, where they go back and forth between states all the time, and they may have a form from 2 or 3 different states. There are 42 states that have pulse forms currently. There are 8 states that do not have any form or any type of this form, so it's really state by state.
Put together your advanced healthcare directive. That's what you should.
Rebecca?
I took a wonderful advanced healthcare directive class online, UTSF, and one of the things that came up was CPR is not like it is in the movie. I know that's a big question about how a person makes a decision about whether, because I guess you can come out pretty injured and probably more so as we're older. Who addressed that?
We.
Can you repeat the question?
It's the first thing I was told.
Well, so on trying to summarize the question. On the first part is, it was A, B, C, D. And this is a very clear form, which is why I like it. Do you want CPR or not? Sometimes you just have to ask it at the moment. And it's...
When a person collapses.
You can't really ask it. You can't really ask it at the moment because you only do CPR when someone has no pulse and they're not breathing, so you can't talk to them. They are dead.
Too late. Well, you can anticipate when someone is the proverbial circuit around the drain and you expect that something's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. You better have that conversation pretty quick. And sometimes people will have this, then it's very helpful. If they don't, you try to ask them, and if they can't, or don't have the capacity, you try to ask a family member. But what do you do when none of that happens? I mean, those are really difficult decisions. And I don't...
I'm sorry, my question is really, what about injury created?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, yes, so...
Question, please?
Sure. I think the question is, what injuries does CPR cause? And you bet, they cause big injuries. We're talking rib fractures, punctured lungs, not very good, and not very successful either. And if it is successful, then you're going to be in a pretty miserable state. So I try to tell people that, we could do this if you want, but I want you to know what the risks and benefits are. And the benefits are often small, low, and the risks are high. Good,
Is this
good
the same
question.
as do not resuscitate? There was a question
DNR.
Yes,
on one of the forms I filled out.
right.
Do not resuscitate, is
Correct.
that the?
It can also be known as allow natural death.
Okay.
Mm,
A-N-D. It is on that form. It says it right after DNR.
right.
A-N-D. You have no pulse, you have no respiration, you've technically died. Are we going to allow for that natural death for you? That's really a great question.
Perfect. So, to go into that question, the pulse form is really aimed at people who have chronic serious illnesses, people who you anticipate are going to die within the next year. It's not meant for people who are healthy, who are going to want everything done in the first place.
Mhm.
Someone asked me, that the doctor said they should have a form and they were going to do a temp resuscitation, and I said, then you don't need a form, because that's the default category.
Yes.
So again, this is actually an EMS form, okay? And the people who this is most important to is EMTs who come out to your house, and whether they're going to resuscitate you or not. And the reality is that the success rate of out-of-hospital resuscitations is very minimal, and even the result of in-hospital resuscitations are about 15 to 20% of people survive. And the older you are and the more chronic illnesses, the less likely you are to have survive. So if you have stage 4 cancer, your survival is going to be less than 2%. If you're a nursing home patient, your chances of survival are about 0. So, you have to take all those things into consideration when you make those decisions.
So,
And can I say, when people start to work with me, they'll often say, if I get plugged, unplug me. And my advice is, let's work to ensure, to the best of anyone's ability, that you don't get plugged in the first place.
So
And
is this-
that is section A on that pulse.
Is
If
this,
CPR is done, you have to be put into full treatment. You are plugged in if the pulse comes back.
I just wondered, now I already have an advanced directive. Is the pulse form an addendum to that? or?
No, it's an addition, so the pulse form is for what your current treatment wishes are now, and this is a medical order, so if EMS comes to see you, they will follow what's on the pulse form. They will not look at your advance directive, and they will not follow it. And again, you know, I don't know how many of you have advanced directives, but I mean, I used to work in the emergency room too. I had people come in with 25-page long advanced directives. I mean, they are a nightmare. One of the beauties of Pulse is that it's a one-page form. It's the only form that I know of in healthcare that everybody in the state of California uses the same form. Think about it, nothing else is the same. Every hospital has a different form. This is one form for the entire state, so everyone knows it and they recognize it easily.
So Mark, am I supposed to fold this thing up and keep it in my wallet all the time? Where does this go? Where do you hang it?
Generally, we advise people who have them to put them under refrigerators because that's where EMS looks for it. You know, we've looked at bracelets, you know, for like allergy bracelets and things like that. They just don't work in emergencies. People don't look for them. So, you know, it's really, you need to have it available when they get there. We're currently in the process of trying to get a statewide registry so that there will be an electronic registry so that EMS or emergency rooms can just go online real quickly and they can pull out a pulse form of the patient. And that's in the process of, you know, being developed, and I'm working on that right now.
Great, thank you very much. Well, go ahead.
I'll be brief.
Go ahead.
So, the beauty of this is it communicates very quickly. As Mark said, looking at somebody's lawyer, completely unhelpful. No offense, Steve. The other thing is, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. I have senior moments too. I know you guys do. Okay. So it's very clear. It tells us what you want us to do.
Question?
Yeah, with all this coming up, I just wanted to make a plug for everybody get airlift insurance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They have a new service, I just had to use it in July, and I didn't, there was a time when I was younger that I should have had it and didn't, and I had kids and, you know, didn't want them to airlift me, I should have gone, but, it worked, I didn't pay a dime. They also have a fly you home. So if you're in New York and you wanna get home to California, it's another $100 and something, crazy cheap. This would've been $25,000 for life, and they paid for the whole thing, so everybody get it, it's amazing, I can't believe how well it worked.
I just had a synapse very quickly. So if I fill out one of these in the hospital, it goes into the patient's chart. If you get admitted to the hospital, they go through this. So that's a good policy and practice.
And that's the same thing with advanced directives also. They go into your file when you take them into your medical provider or the hospital. So that document, the PULSE does not replace an advanced healthcare directive, folks. They're combined and they complement each other.
Yeah, they do complement each other, and if there is a discrepancy between the two, the most current document takes precedent. Okay? You know, the thing with the pulse form is that it can be filled out by your decision maker. It does not have to be filled out by the patient. An advanced directive has to be filled out by the patient and can only be filled out by the patient. Earlier was mentioned about possibly advanced directives for dementia. This has been talked about a lot. I do not anticipate that the End of Life Act will change in California in the near future to include patients with. The big issue is that there are 10 states in the United States and Washington D.C. that have End of Life Act laws. They all require patients having a terminal diagnosis that they're going to die within the next 6 months. So patients with dementia, unless they have some other underlying disease, do not qualify because by the time they are terminally ill, they will not have capacity to make decisions. The other thing is the patient also has to be able to self-administer the medication, and patients with dementia generally cannot self-administer it. A comparison would be Canada, where their law was set up around the same time we were in 2016. Canada had changes in their law because of court cases, so that Canada does not require a terminal diagnosis of 6 months. It requires that you have a serious and chronic illness that you will eventually die from. So patients with dementia can qualify in Canada. And in Canada, they also do not have to self-administer. The physicians can administer the medications. So to give you a comparison, we started the same time Canada. California and Canada have about the same population, about 40 million. In 2023, we had 700 people do medical aid dying in California, and they had 14,000 do it in Canada.
Wow.